Hello, welcome to Speech Talk Live. This is episode number 56. My name is Jay Oza. I'm the host of the show, and my co-host is Julie Wu Finkelstein. Julie and I are both mentors for the excellent Coursera course on public speaking called Introduction to Public Speaking. And we do this as a way to help the Coursera community, but also a wider community who is interested in this topic, public speaking. And as I always say, public speaking is a must skill, but it's one skill that's not really taught in schools anymore. It's a skill that is critical. You pretty much have to learn it on your own. So that's what Julie and I do. And we're here to, teach, learn, mentor, coach, and also support. So that's what we try to do. We try to bring up different topics related to public speaking and have a discussion around it, partly to, as I said, to learn, to teach, and also a lot of people out there who want to know about it, they have really no other place to go to besides a course like the Coursera course that is free, excellent course. I highly recommend it. And they have a forum, but we want to kind of put some people behind that, we're here to support you. We're here to take your public speaking, for some people, just getting started, and for other people, take it to the next level. And today we have two segments. The first segment is, I've made a companion video, and it has to do with, I named it, You Own Your Speech. And I want to talk more about it. And it comes from recently from the Republican National Convention, where Donald Trump's wife, Melania, gave a speech, and they found out that certain passages were plagiarized. So I want to talk more about that and maybe even expand it beyond just that. You own your speech. What does that mean, actually? And then in the second segment, I will interview Julie. Well, actually, it'll be more of a discussion. So we're going to have a conversation on this thing where Julie has been working on this companion video series on how to brand yourself. And today she wants to talk about the informational interview, why that is so important to do it. And I want to talk about it and see what we can learn from that. So that's the show for today. And at this point, I'd like Julie to introduce herself, and then we'll do a quick 90-minute segment and then get to our first segment. So Julie, go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Jay. Good morning, everybody, and Jay, and thank you for running this program. Wow, we're in episode 56. Kudos to you. My name is Julie, and I am really an experimenter. Right now, I'm thinking about creating a series called the Napkin Series. You know how like many great ideas such as Facebook and Microsoft, the birth of that was on a napkin. And I think that many people I've been talking to, just this morning, I spent an hour coaching somebody on creating a project plan. Now, she's not going to be a project manager, but she needed a plan. So I said, let's pretend this is a napkin. And then we created a plan for her. So now she has a map to how to get her project done. Her project was doing a website. The idea for napkins is basically take the essentials, put it down. It's not pretty, but it's going to be 80% of the ideas, the old 80-20% rule. And I think that as an entrepreneur, we need literacy in project management, finance, branding, marketing, and client management. And I think using the napkins approach may be a nice way to transfer a lot of knowledge very quickly. So I'm just playing with that idea, and if you have any ideas on that, I welcome any feedback you have. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, I like that idea. In fact, some of the businesses were started that way. The famous one that comes to mind is Southwest. I don't know if you remember, where the guy who found, I forgot his name, he drew on a napkin the 3 destinations that they were going to. I think was San Antonio, three cities in Texas. I forgot what 3 cities were. I think one was near Dallas, and the other one might have been Houston. So that's how they started on a napkin. So I like that idea, that if you can't explain it on a napkin, then perhaps it's not a good idea. So yeah, I'd like to know more about that when you develop it. Okay, so at this point, we're going to use our 90-minute segment to bring up a topic that we're working on, that we want to kind of introduce as a way to see what kind of response we get. And that's what we use the 90-minute segment, just not 90 minutes, sorry, 90 second. We're not going to spend 90 minutes. That's a little bit too long. So I want to talk about something, because I'm in the mood right now, talk about politics. Since I've been watching these conventions, I'm kind of a little bit of a political junkie. I like politics because, let's face it, politics is everywhere, whether it's in government, in business, and everything. There's politics around it. You got to learn it. So one of the things that I'm working on right now, and it's something that I'm still developing, is why the politics here in the U.S. has kind of gone off rails. And I think it has gone off rails for one reason. I think when a person gets elected a president, and let's say if it's a Republican or a Democrat, the other party has to kind of realize that this person has been elected by the entire population, and he kind of drives the agenda. And at that point, the role of the other party is to somehow work with them and reach a compromise on certain solution, because at the end, you want to make people's lives better. And I call that, this is not my invention, this is what they call, that's how sausage gets made, on how to work together to pass legislation. What has happened, I believe this started happening right after, right as soon as I think Bill Clinton got elected, or maybe when George Bush was president, or maybe right after, perhaps when Bill Clinton, is that now when the person on the opposition, they don't even want to be inside the sausage factory. They just want to lock it up and not even enter it. So they don't even want to even discuss how sausage gets made. And as a result, what we're happening now is that we have two parties that are thinking they're representing the people, but they're not. And this is a big topic, and I just wanted to bring it up because politics right now is at the forefront because of the conventions. And I'm trying to figure out why things are not working. And that's what I could come up with, that the role of an opposition has become not to just say, okay, I'm going to get involved in the sausage making process. They just don't even want to be involved anymore. They're just saying that I don't need to be involved. I just want to completely lock the factory up and don't even care whether anything comes out of that factory. So anyway, like I said, this is a topic that I'm going to be developing more as part of my, speaking exercise, and it's something I'm interested in. So Julie, at this point, I'll turn it over to you for your 90-second topic.
Thanks, Jay. Today's 90-second topic is about when you do your visions as an entrepreneur, include the numbers, do the numbers. A lot of people I do visualization work with, they visualize what the day is going to be like, they visualize what kind of services they get, but they never get to the numbers. And ideas don't have legs until they have numbers. So yesterday, actually the day before, I worked with a young entrepreneur from Brazil. And basically I asked him, how much money do you want to take home? And that number is actually pretty standard and pretty easily gotten, which is $100,000. They want to, and then the first question I said, is that your take-home money or is that your revenue? And they don't realize that. So that's the first thing I train people on is how much money do you want to make, and is that your take-home money? And that's really important because it introduces the concept of expenses and overhead. And I have this really quickie number is, I say, two ways you can look at that. Let's say that you want let's say you want to take home $100,000, and then you have to add administrative expenses. I say 10% profit, 10% operational profit 10%, marketing 10%, sales 10%, and unexpected 10%. So in other words, 50% of what you make goes into overhead. So if you want to take home $100,000 net, you need to make $200,000. Now, that number is a ballpark number, and the whole idea is it doesn't even have to be true. What it creates is a scaffold that allows you to ask that question over and over again every time you do your business plan, every time you do your vision statement, every time you talk to a business partner, a consultant, a lawyer. And what that does is it plants a seed for the viability of your idea. So I highly suggest throw the numbers into your vision. Start off with a very simple question. How much do you want to take home? And that then breaks down into, and I say 3 years, in 3 years, because my experiences, any kind of even very basic professional practices takes 3 years to mature. So organizations, I would say maybe 5 years. In 5 years, you'll make that, because then you can create a migration plan into that goal. So what I call that is putting the target on the wall, and then you can create an arrow, and you can release the arrow into your target, and that's your business plan. So start with some numbers. That's it. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. I completely agree. The one thing I'm gonna point out is, and this is what I've experienced. So the last job that I had, I was making about, I think it was $150,000. Okay, that's how much I was making, and I didn't even feel like I was even working that hard. But somehow in corporations, you can make that depending on your background and whatever, right? So then when I started doing stuff on my own, I kept that number in mind that, oh, I should be making 150 if I'm working just as hard on myself. And I realized after, I think it took me a while to realize it, that you can't compare it like that, because the money you make in corporation is so different than the money you make when you're doing something on your own. And I don't think people ever explain that. You know, they never tend to explain that when you are working on your own, the hours that you put in are going to be substantially more than the hours you put in when you work for a company. And that's why the companies pay you so much, because you don't get that freedom. That if you want that freedom to do what you want, then the hour part, at least like even right now, I put in so many hours doing things like on weekends and stuff that I would never put in if I was working for a company. So that part is kind of hard to calculate. I don't know how to do that. Perhaps you may talk about that at some point, because a lot of freelancers get this thing like, hey, you should, they have this false notion that they should be getting paid based on what they were getting paid when they were working for a company, trading in their hours for dollars, right? But when it's your own, like I'm pretty sure you can relate to this, that how many hours you put in trying to put all these things together. And unless it turns into some sort of, that's what I'm working on right now, trying to package it and market it and all that, then I think at that point you can do it, but that's a long path. So maybe you may have a comment. I think you mentioned that it takes 3 to 5 years. And a lot of people don't even get that. They give up and they get back into the workforce because they can't accept the fact that they can't make the same money when they were working for. See, for me, I don't even look at it that way anymore, because I've been out of corporation for so long that I don't even think like, oh, the effort I'm putting in, I'm not making that much money, because I know that what I'm doing is trying to build something. And if I start comparing it, then I would have to quit right away. Go ahead.
It's a great point, because I call that culture shock, right? When you drop out of the corporate environment into your own. And I had to do that too. I was managing a staff of 30 people. I wasn't making as much as you were, because I was 10 years earlier than you were. But Yeah, and then you lose the support. You lose the administrative support. You need the you miss the camaraderie. You miss people to bounce ideas with. So it's kind of like you're being dropped off into the middle of China. You have to learn all these new skills, new language. And then the other thing is what I call the rock star syndrome, right? This is true in any consulting services. You have one or two people making so much money, and then the rest of the people just struggle along. So the question is, how do you become a rock star, or do you even want to be? Because there's always trade-offs, and you're right, you work a lot, and it's because the corporations have momentum, right? They have this momentum, and you're basically bootstrapping a whole new sector. So you're bootstrapping it usually by yourself. There's a lot of loneliness there too, and there's lack of feedback, because you're trying to do something new. So all those are like really challenges of an entrepreneur. The other thing is a company, they pay whatever your salary is. Let's make it like an even number, like $100,000. 40-50% more they pay in overhead. So any employee costs the company 150%. So the inverse, you say, well, heck, I can always make that 150% of what I'm making my salary. And the case in point is what you just said. It ain't so. It just ain't so, because you're playing in a different ocean. You're moving from a stable ocean where your income ceilings are capped, your creativity is capped, your freedom's capped, into a brand new ocean, but it's a much different ocean. So I think anybody who wants to do entrepreneurial work needs to be very resilient. It's not just about money.
Yeah, there's another word I'm going to throw. It's something that Seth Godin mentions, and I guess in a way he would say that there's no real difference. He uses the word artist, that we all have to have the artist mindset where we have to constantly be creating something, and that's what entrepreneurs do. They are kind of like artists. They have to create something, and there's no guarantee that, and you're not there's no entitlement that just because you're an artist, people have to like the art that you're producing. And a lot of people have real difficulty with that, because like in companies, when you go and work a day or whatever, you get paid. At the end, there's a paycheck that is consistent. And consistency is very important for a lot of people. They don't want something that is that certainty, right? There's a consistency and certainty. The uncertainty is very difficult. And they would rather have that than to create art that they know that there's an uncertainty that people may not like it. I mean, you and I are kind of going through that, right? We're kind of like artists. We're creating a lot of stuff, but it's not clear whether there is a real people out there. But you can't stop. Otherwise, you're not going to be an artist. If artists, once you get away from that mindset, then it's very difficult. Yeah, we can talk about this more. And I think it's a very interesting topic, because it's something you and I do know quite a bit about, because we are not just talking about it, but we are actually practicing it. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to take a brief pause and then move to our first segment. Okay, welcome back to Speech Talk Live, episode number 56. My name is Jay Oza. I'm the host of the show, and my co-host is Julie Wu Finkelstein. And as I indicated, we're both mentors for the Coursera course, Introduction to Public Speaking. We're moving to segment number 1. And this segment, I have a companion video that's called You Own Your Speech. And I made this, it's a short video, it's only 2 minutes, and I'll tell you what it's all about if you don't have time to watch it. It was because I made this video because of the incident that took place at the Republican National Convention, where Donald Trump's wife, Melania Trump, gave a speech. It was an excellent speech. She did a good job. And then they found out that certain passages were taken from Michelle Obama's speech. And when you listen to it, you can tell that they were pretty much identical. The word is plagiarism. So at that point, I thought about it that now this may not apply to many of us, or it may, I don't know, that when we're working on a speech, we pretty much own it. We work on it right from the beginning and we deliver it. But as you get more famous, as Melania Trump is, they don't really get involved. It's as we found out that we don't even know what their involvement is when it comes to speech, because all I can tell you is it's a lot of work. And when people have a real busy lifestyle where they have to be visible, seen everywhere, they just can't put in that time. And it's unfortunate because a speech is something where you're going to be, it's like, it's almost like, let's say you're an actor. Part of it is that you're acting, right? When an actor acts, he is just responsible for the lines that are given to him, the script, right? The screenwriter writes the script, and then he's responsible for his passage only. And, they have a talent that brings that character to life, and that's why they get paid a lot of money, and they do a great job. But when we're giving a speech, we have to do everything, right? We have to create the content, then be able to deliver it. You own your speech. You're responsible for the entire speech from the time of, if you want to use the word, ideation or conception till it's launched. So you can't just say, okay, somebody just give me a speech and I'll just read it, and a lot of people do that. I know, because that's the easy path out. Nobody wants to put in the time, and I teach people that don't do that because sooner or later you're going to be found out that you're a total phony. And it's unfortunate that this happened because it makes her look kind of like she's a phony, like she can't think on her own. She wasn't even involved in the process, that she basically took the lines and somebody caught it. Today with Google and all that, YouTube, it's not that difficult to do that. So the point here is that public speaking, we think of it as just giving a speech, but there's a whole part that's not visible. It's the actual crafting of a speech, and that can be very time consuming, and there's a lot of work that goes into that, and you have to be involved in that entire process. You got to learn it. I mean, I think that reading a speech off a teleprompter, I don't believe is that difficult. For some people it may be, but eventually I've seen it. People who are not good speech writers or can never even give a speech without reading it can deliver a good speech reading from a written material or even a teleprompter. But I just don't think that that's that effective. I mean, for a large audience it may be, but eventually you really need to start speaking from your heart, and that requires a lot of work and practice. So I want to get Julie's take on it, because the topic we're using is Melania Trump, but it's much bigger than that, because a lot of people feel that giving a speech is that I just need to read a speech. And I try to tell people to get away from that you don't want to read a speech because you can't connect with the audience. And after a while, the audience doesn't feel like you're really even talking to them. Julie, what is your thought on this? I don't know if you saw that Melania Trump speech and the whole controversy regarding her lifting some passages, cribbing some passages from Michelle Obama's speech that she gave in 2008. But overall, generally, like when I say you own your speech, how do you view the whole process?
Thanks, Jay. Well, in terms of you own your speech, I think for the people who are at that level, it's a different game. Of course, as mere mortals living this mortal life, you and I own our speeches. I think they did it on purpose. Donald Trump was recorded saying, because of this, we got more visibility for basically they stole the screen, they stole the media time for that. And then the message is almost inconsequential. You know, Marshall McLuhan says the media is a message, and it's almost like they did it on purpose because they stole from Michelle Obama's speech. And then they got all this airtime, and then Donald went on the show and said, we got all the airtime. And then, so they basically, Donald himself, a common business practice is go buy things and then don't pay them. I mean, that's many case history. So honesty and ethics has never been part of their brand, So the fascinating, say one more thing is Marshall McLuhan says media is the message. And our subconscious mind takes in the message far more than what we process, the words. So the subconscious mind was seeing Melania parallel to Michelle. Who in the world would think that they are on par with each other? And yet that's a message we got in our subconscious over and over and over again. They won't say they did it, but they own it. I mean, they gave interviews on it. They talked about it. It's almost like they wanted to revel in it, to create controversy. The old adage, it's not whether you're right or wrong, it's just that you get the visibility. So I think they did it on purpose. They did it so Michelle and Melania are considered to be on par or peer-to-peer level, and that this was a free media. They got it banging at us. And also, the more substantial issues about Donald Trump's ethics, his business practices, that some of it was he still hasn't shown people his tax statement. There was a lot of controversy about when he declared bankruptcy. A lot of people suffer from his business practices. So all the deeper underlying issues of who Donald is, what he knows, what he doesn't know, his ethical practices, were pushed aside. So in a way, they're like a magician. They got us to look the other way. And I think they did it on purpose. So they actually, in some ways, they created it, so they own it in their own way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about it. So what you're saying is that whether it was intentional or unintentional, at the end, they basically benefited because what it showed was if they had not plagiarized parts of Michelle Obama's speech, then they couldn't show a split screen side by side, Michelle Obama and Melania Trump. And what you're saying is that for people to say, oh, Michelle Obama is the first lady, it's not a far stretch, and Melania Trump sounds just like Michelle Obama, so, oh, she can also be a first lady. So it's basically telling people that start looking at Melania Trump as a first lady, because look, we're comparing her to, even though you're saying that, yeah, most people are saying like it's plagiarism, but some of us are missing the bigger picture. What they got out of it is that, hey, it's not a far stretch to think of Melania Trump as the first lady, because look, she sounds exactly like Michelle Obama. So perhaps I didn't think of it that way. That's pretty clever. If that's what they were, if that's what they were trying to do, then they're more clever than I am. But I think my point here was the whole process of, and these people don't have time. I was just kind of using Melania Trump as a saying that speech making is not that simple. It requires a lot of, and here she did spend a lot of time on it, and according to everything I read. But it just goes to show that that when you're giving a speech, it's a process, and you got to really, and again, these are all speeches that are read. But when you are speaking, you have to really start practicing these things. These are skills that you have to develop. Any closing thoughts before we move on to our next segment? You're still muted.
Yeah, so what I hear from you a lot is that this is hard, this is hard, this is hard. I mean, that's, but what I want to take away from your presence and your role modeling is that this is hard. It's hard to get started. Don't beat oneself up if we can't get started. And that there's people like you to help us to get started. and that you can help us ramp up, and you can decrease the life cycle of how long it takes for us to get started, because we can learn from you. We can gain, whatever you suffer, we can reduce that pain because you can share your wisdom with us. So I like to take away that this is hard. This is hard. So we can be a little bit more generous and kind with ourselves, and that you make it easier so that if we follow what you do, you reduce that difficulty level and how the time frame it takes for us to achieve the goal, because we're standing on your shoulders.
Yeah, and I think what we're doing is exactly what we're doing. We're doing this type of show, which for a lot of people, it's very difficult. And what I keep telling people is that it's not that difficult. You just need to find somebody and just do a show like the way we're doing it. So I can offer all kinds of shortcuts, but at some point, you still have to do it, right? And that's what I'm trying to tell people. And I think what you were saying before was that whole napkin. This is sort of like the napkin approach, right? We're not like pros here. We're not, working for a network or television network, that cable news network. We're just saying, hey, we have something to talk about. This is our way of getting better. And the only way you get better is just jump in the water at some point, get that napkin out. And this is our napkin. This is how we are, like you just mentioned in the beginning, this is our 56th show. And there are really no shortcuts. Because I remember one feedback that I received, somebody saying that, doing a show might be too much of a leap for many people. And I was kind of taken back by that, because I don't believe it's a big leap for anybody. The technology today is so pervasive that putting on this show is not. What have I done? I just went into Google Hangout on Air, started it, invited you, you came on, boom, the show started. It's simple as that. And then we're just talking, right? We just put together a quick agenda and we decided to there's nothing scripted here, right? I have nothing scripted here. As you can see, I'm just making notes. And that's what you have to do. So there's nothing really secret about this. The secret really is in the videos, and you have to start taking that action and do it. So there's my little quick thing on my secret, if there is a secret there. Okay, at this point, I'm going to take a brief pause, and then we'll move on to our second segment. Okay, welcome back to Speech Talk Live. This is episode number 56. My name is Jay Oza, the host of the show, and my co-host is Julie Wu Finkelstein. And in this second segment, we're going to be discussing something that Julie has taken on as a project where she helps people define their identity or help them create their brand before they go out in the real world, whether it's for social, for personal, or even for professional. Most of them, I believe, are probably going to be for professional. And one of the technique that she has recorded a companion video, but I'd like her to discuss it here, is this idea of like, how do you discern things from people? Like, people have a lot to say, but they need to kind of get it out. A lot of them don't ever know what they are really even saying because they never record it. So Julie has come up with this idea, which I agree. I think it's very helpful. In fact, I've been working with her on this, where she just says, okay, just let's get on and I'll just do an interview with you. She calls it an informational interview. And that's like sort of like the raw interview. And then from there, she then works with you and we can both watch it and see what you like, what you don't like, and then start developing some kind of a content or a message from that, so that you come across, so you have a clear identity. So whatever you're saying is consistent with the identity that she's helping you create. So I'm going to ask her, Julie, can you like expand on this whole concept of informational interview, and where have you used it, and what have your experience been with people that you have used it with? like to know more about it, and you can kind of tell us, if somebody wants to do it, what do they have to do to get started?
Oh, thanks, Jay. So, as you know, this is the interview is a piece of the project that's related to the idea of branding and identity. Um, just this morning, I spent an hour help someone to pull all the elements of basically a bio. And the bio is kind of like the seed or the core information that's used for the interview. So why do an interview? As you and I know, I have been working on bios for years. When I was a consultant with my own company, I had a bio, but since then I've had CVs, resumes, but I've never had a bio. But by doing this work in Tom Peters' book called Brand New, finding that bios are really, really important. And most of us are kind of a little bit stuck because we're not told to celebrate ourselves. So it's very hard for us to say good things about ourselves. So the interview is kind of like getting people out of the gate to talk about themselves. And then also I have a structure and I have a more detailed process, a cheat sheet on how to do it. And really starts with kind of, again, like what you call the Aristotle technique. I call it the sandwich technique. Start with the core and end with the core. The core sentence in the beginning is, what do you do? And people find that really, really hard. I go on to say, why are you so passionate about it? And tapping into the passion, kind of tapping into the reasons for doing it. And then I said, well, what are your natural talents? The natural talents actually help them to link what they do. So instead of editing people right away on what they do, I just let them talk. And then for those talents and passions, I ask them to circle a few key words. And using those keywords as like an anchor, I ask people to list relevant, the keyword that is relevant skills and experiences that connect to those keywords. And then I go back and ask them what they do. And that message that what they do is really what they really do. And that becomes their core sentence in the bio. And so the interview is basically it can be used for two purposes. It's a structured way of facilitating that stream of thought. But once that's done, it can be also the vehicle to publicize people. As again, I go back to the original point that most people don't know how to talk about themselves, think about themselves, or even to say good things about themselves. So the interview, again, opens the gateway for that process. And also it lends clarity. As you know, the interview kind of gives you someone to focus on and provides anchors and mirroring for whether the message gets through or not. So I'm going to read this thing about a brand from this book by Tom Peters. He was the author of In Search of Excellence, if you recall. And he's written the book called Brand New 50. And this is from Scott Bedbury, and he branded Nike and Starbucks. So this is what he says. And when we do an interview, this is what we want to get through. A great brand taps into emotions. Emotions drives most, if not all, of our decisions. A brand reaches out with a powerful connection experience. It is an emotional connection point that transcends the product, you. A great brand is a story that's never completely told. A brand is a metaphorical story that's evolving all the time. Stories create the emotional context people need to locate themselves in a larger experience. So I've been working with this musician in Britain, as you know, in Brighton, and he actually doesn't mind the publicity. He's creating this brand called Homesick Mick. And in his brand, he wants three three key points. Real music for real people. Music is a universal language of the soul. And being abducted, being alone, being lost, and then coming home. So this CD is he's homesick, he got adopted, but now he's coming home. And the next series is he'll be homebound or homewormic, where he has the direction. So that's his metaphor, that's his brand. And that brand helped him to create his images, his website, and also because he wants real people for real music for real people, and he has a global connections. I'm going to ask him to put real people from around the world into his portfolio of images. And then I'll interview him about that. So to interview throughout this process, I've been guiding him in his image and his branding. So the interview will help him to clarify his message and also give credibility, because it's someone who outside of his employment circle who's mirroring back the essence of his message. Thank you. I'll turn that back over to you.
Right. No, that's a great idea. I'll point to something that you said in this discussion that you just kind of get people to talk about. One of the things that I read in a book that I was reading recently, and I think it applies to all of us, and I think this is something you're trying to get out of people. The question that people have, and this happens in job interviews a lot, the question people feel, I think it's the simplest question, and this person found that this is the most difficult question for many people, is when they ask you, tell me something about yourself. And I think that question, no matter whether you're looking for a job or whether you're doing a business, it is a question that is a fundamental question that you have to nail. You can't go further unless you got that question nailed. Because if you don't have that question down, then everything after that, people are just not going to, they're going to kind of tune you out because you didn't capture their attention with who you are. They want to know why you're interesting, what makes you so interesting. And in a different context, and what makes that question so difficult is that the context is different. So you need to change you have to answer it based on the context. Otherwise, if you are a professor and you tell people I'm a professor, well, I don't think the people there really care about that, right? You have to somehow look at the context and answer it. And that is something I think that I need to work on. Like if I'm coaching people on public speaking, if I'm in a professional setting, I have to answer it one way. If I'm in a different setting, casual conversation, then I have to answer it in a different way. But at the same time, it should make me look interesting. It should make me interesting somewhere where they want to know more about it. And I think that is a very simple exercise, but it's not that, again, I keep saying it's not easy. These things are never that easy, but we kind of just assume, we just kind of plod along thinking that people will eventually figure it out. And I always tell people it's not their job to figure it out. It's your job to make it clear for them, because if they have to figure it out, then they're going to just say, okay, I won't figure it out, because the brain doesn't work like that. So I like what you do there, that these are simple questions that we don't ever really focus on how important they are, because the other side, they just want simplicity. They're not trying to, you're not a formula that they're trying to figure out. You have to kind of give it to them so that they don't have to think too hard.
Yes, the NASBIT in the book Megatrends created this paradox. It's actually a tie into many situations. His paradox was high tech, high touch. So in order for the people hearing you to receive the message easily and effortlessly and simply, you have to do the engineering behind it so it's easily reachable. So it's simple. It's what I call apparently, or it looks simple, but to engineer a really good message takes a lot of time. This morning I spent an hour with this woman, and she's been stuck for literally for years. She had a piece there, but she couldn't bring it into a message. So that's one thing I'm really good at, is to pick out the highlighted dots, like the important dots, and then connect the lines. Now, they might not be exactly the right story, but it gives a place where people say, yes, that's my story, except for that piece. And the questions I do really help. So you mentioned about the variety necessary for context. I will just go a deeper level and say, but there has to be a consistency in ideas in any context. And going back to your job interview, is people actually don't hire the skill set. Skill sets are a necessary component, but not sufficient. What makes the difference? What is the closing connector? Is always the human being. So tell me about yourself. Is the gate opener and the gate closer in a job interview. And these days, it's even more important because, as you said, because the world is so global, there's so much variety, and things are moving so quickly, people need to have an opinion about you in a very short time. And it's your job, as you say, not you, but our job, to create a message that's simple and easy and effortless for other people to get. And it's very critical to our success, whether we're working a job, whether we're looking for a date, or whether we're an entrepreneur and we're pitching all the time. Which is why I think this whole branding project I'm doing is so exciting,
Yeah, I agree. I think what you're doing there is very interesting, and I think it's something that I have to check that book out. It's Brand You by Tom Peters. Is this a new book, or it's been out for a while? Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you.
It's actually not a great book. It's rather difficult to read. But if you can get through the difficulties, he has some really good gems. Right. Basically, he's giving you more than 50, but more than, he says 50, but it's really more like 200 action items. So if you do any 1 or 2 action items, you've gotten your money's worth.
Right. One thing I would like you to expand in the future program is, how do you test your brand? Because everybody talks about branding, right? Branding is just a generic word. Like, you got to have a brand, right? But at some point you have to kind of test it out, and maybe you have some techniques. Like, how do you test it, that whether that is indeed your brand? I might think I have a brand, but that's not a real brand. So maybe that's something I'm going to give you as an action item, so something to think about. That, yes, I like the exercise of doing all this, but then how do I know that that is indeed my brand? Like, how do I validate it? Okay, Julie, at this point...
I just need to close that question out. It's like marketing. It's essentially a marketing project. So you use the marketing process.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so I'm sure there's a lot more than, like, when you market it, you have to constantly test it. Because I think the branding that we're talking about is your personal branding. So, like, when you're in a social situation, you have a brand, but now you have to take it to the next level to see whether people outside are seeing the brand that you think you have. And how do you test that? And that's a pretty interesting thing that I'd like to find out. I'm sure the book goes into it, and you'll probably have your ideas. So at this point, I'd like to close. Julie, do you have anything that you want to tie up regarding any of the 2 segments that we talked about before we close out the show?
Well, thanks, Jay. It's been an exciting day, as usual, at the farm, at the public speaking farm, and I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, this was a different. I think we're going to do more of these type of format rather than, we'll record videos, we'll have a discussion so that it becomes an interactive thing rather than just I talk, she talks. I think this is going to be more of a conversational, and we're trying to experiment with different things to make the show more exciting, and also something we want to practice too, because at the end, Julie and I can record the show, as I just mentioned to her. It's not that difficult. You just go on, hang out on air, and start it. Boom, you got yourself a show. But at the same time, we want to try to improve it to see whether it is interesting for other people who are watching it, and also for them to actually encourage them to actually do it. So at this point, I'd like to close out the show by saying that you are how you speak, and you control how you speak. Julie and I are doing this show so that we can improve. We can review what we're doing here and keep improving incrementally. And that's what public speaking is all about. This is as I always say, this is a difficult skill. It's a skill that you have to constantly keep doing it, because every time you talk to people, they're different. Their experiences are different. And there are so many different techniques that come to play when you are speaking with another person. Context, body language, all voice, and all of these things. And there's a lot to learn, and it's a learning something you do over the entire lifetime. So at this point, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please let me or Julie know. We're always trying to learn on our own and also from others. So if you have anything that you think could make the show better, don't hesitate to reach out to us. So at this point, thank you for watching, and we will call this a wrap at this point.